Hey readers, I'm Danny.
And I'm Leandra, and we are not reading for content.
This is a monthly book club podcast dedicated to reading in depth and leaving no plot point unturned. Each month, we read one book over the course of 3 episodes, basically reading 1/3 of the book at a time. Feel free to listen along, or better yet, read the book with us. Our first season of the book club has the theme of genre blends. A list of books and the club schedule will be in the description. Hello, bookish friends. Welcome to our first bonus episode of the podcast. We are so excited to get to share with you guys some bookish memories from 2024. So, as some of you know, we posted to the masses that we wanted you all to write in some of your favorite bookish memories. And we thought it would be fun to have a discussion with your memories and then also giving our own.
We have organized your responses into 4 different categories, and the first category we're going to cover are literally books. So, your best memories surrounding a certain title, a book that will definitely be memorable moving forward into 2025. Thank you all so much for these comments, by the way. And the first person we'll be highlighting is Constance. And Constance's favorite bookish memory involves War and Peace. So finally, finishing War and Peace after starting it no lie in 2020. I loved it, and it was well worth the time investment, and even the years it spent sitting at just a few chapters in. I don't have words to describe it other than epic and cozy at once. Maybe that's the reason it's called War and Peace, to contrast the two feelings that run through it. Anyway, 2024 became the year of Russian epics after that. I also read Brothers Karamazov and loved it, restarted Crime and Punishment, and read The Master and Margarita after owning it for several years. Anna Karenina is still on the list. Oh, maybe I also finished Gulag Archipelago Volume 1 this year. I should continue that one. So clearly, Constance is just in her Russian epic era, and hopefully that continues into 2025.
We also had Lynn T, who has a couple of different categories, but we're just going to focus on the books for now. Says that their favorite book was The Women, and really liked the audio of the Night Circus, laughed out loud for Listen for the Lie. So lots of book memories to bring with you into 2025. We also had Lynn from Surprise It's Us said, I love chunky reads. I love hearing Danny's take on anything Goblin and Kings of the Wild. And I love sharing those things with you too. I love Goblins, and Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose have been just an amazing series for me this year. So I appreciate you bringing it up, Lynn. We also had Bo from Bo Loves Books saying their favorite bookish memory was reading the Bound and the Broken series and becoming obsessed with epic fantasy again, which I love. I love this for you, Bo. With all of your comments, we also have our favorite books that we are wanting to share with you. So, Leandra, what is a favorite book that you have this year? A favorite book memory? What do you have in your treasure chest of memories?
I didn't create an answer before we actually started recording. I just realized that's okay, though. I'll answer on the fly. So, one memory that I think I will keep with me is returning to an author that I actually haven't read in a couple years, Sherry Thomas. So, I recently ended up reading the 3rd book in the Lady Sherlock series, and I read the first book in 2021, the second book in 2022. So I took a 2-year hiatus from this author, and it was actually thanks to a certain bookish video that required me to pick this author back up. And now I'm just so happy that I'm ending the year with that book. I obviously plan to read other books before 2024 ends, but I think that 2024 has reminded me that it is good to return to authors that you love. I'm one of those people who constantly are trying to find new to me authors, and more often than not, I'm only reading one book by an author before I then move on. But you need to go back. You loved this author before, you should love them again. And so I think that's one of the themes I want to bring back into 2025, is that keep returning to authors, keep continuing series, because it was such a delight. And I don't know what made me wait 2 years to read this book. Oh, and
Yeah.
also title is The Hollow of Fear by Sherry Thomas. I promise I'm a professional. Definitely recommend the series. The first book is a Study in Scarlet Women. So write that down, A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas, because it is worth it. And book 3 was great.
Well, speaking of returning to favorite authors, I also have my answer, and I don't know that this is a favorite book yet, so to be determined, but it will almost certainly be featured in my favorite books of the year. I don't know if it will be my absolute favorite book, and that is Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I was lucky enough to receive the audiobook on publication day, which I did not anticipate whatsoever. I put in my hold, with high hopes at my library, but I was already, I think, like 20th in line, and I put it in like a couple of weeks beforehand because they were allowing people to put their name in the hat prior to, and they ended up purchasing so many copies that I got a copy of the audiobook on the publication day. So I have been slowly making my way through the book because, as you know, it's a 63-hour audiobook. So I'm reading 4 hours a day, and I have just been loving my time back in Stormlight. The Way of Kings is the first book in the Stormlight series, and that is one of my all-time favorite books. I've reread it 3 or 4 times and absolutely love it every single time, and this, not only is it a continuation of that series, but it also takes some of my favorite characters from the series and is, we're seeing them develop in ways that are very sweet, and I have high hopes.
Oh, well, everyone, what you now have are two series that you should start in 2025. One is a historical mystery series, and the other one is a fantasy series. And is anyone surprised? I mean, you're talking to Danny and Leandra here. Those are the two genres we know the most. So, yeah, feel free to let us know in the future if you do pick those books up and if they end up being memorable in 2025 for you.
What's our second category of comments?
Well, our second category, which of course we're very happy to see, are memories surrounding buddy reads. So, books that you read with a friend, maybe a new to you person in the community, or even a group of readers who were just really excited about this book. And it was really lovely to see because obviously that is what ended up getting our podcast started. The fact that Danny and I were buddy readers, and then finally we decided to create this book club. So, yeah, let's take a look at these responses. I have two responses surrounding this topic, but I also know that Danny, you have one. So let's start with you. Tell us about this buddy read memory.
So Beatriz from Beatriz Book Nook says that her favorite bookish memory is honestly when I buddy read for the first time this year, which I love. I love that buddy reads are starting all over the bookish community. I know that they've been around forever, but the fact that people have found it this year is just very heartwarming for me.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you that, when it comes to readers, we all don't have access to everything. We don't know what different experiences we can have. So there are new experiences for us, but there's also experiences we can introduce to other readers, which is very fun. I also have a couple responses, as I said. Jess from this Kiwi says, "Oh gosh, so many bookish memories to choose from. I would have to say my favorite would be buddy reading Piranesi by Susanna Clark at the very beginning of the year. It was so fun to talk to these people about my theories, of which there were many, and go down rabbit holes. And it was such a different book than I had ever read before. One that will always stick with me, I think." And Jess, Danny and I love this book too. We didn't read it together. I know it seems sometimes that we've read every book together, but we've both separately read that. And so we love this for you.
That would be such a fun book to buddy read too, because there are, especially the first time you read it, so many theories on what's going on.
Oh, for sure. And actually, I remember I read it before I'd ever tried buddy reading with people. So I didn't even think about the idea that this, how does someone just deal with this theory, these ideas in their head on their own? Somehow I got through it. And yeah, maybe one day we can read another book like that. And, to make up for the fact that we didn't get to buddy read Piranesi with others. Then we have Tennille, and Tennille says, "I did some of my first buddy reads this year as well. Oh my gosh. Those were very fun, and hopefully there will be more to come in 2025. So, Beatriz, Tennille, it's just really lovely to see both of you getting into, the buddy read joy of it all, because it does keep the books even more memorable, I think, actually, because you're discussing them thoroughly. And not to suggest that reading a book on your own, it's harder for you to remember the book, but we just dig into those books so much more. And I think it's the active discussing of these books that just make them a bit fresher in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we need to figure out what buddy read we want to mention for the year of 2024. So, which one did you have in mind? I have one in mind that I think you're gonna find hilarious.
Yes, and you know what? It's tough because I think that I'm actually gonna go with a buddy read that both of us really enjoyed. We really loved this book, and that was The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. What I really love about it is it also, again, represents this podcast and where we started because it's a genre blend of fantasy and mystery, again, bringing Danny and myself together in one book. And I recall going into that book actually a bit hesitant. I was nervous. I enjoyed the idea of this being a Sherlockian reimagining, but I was intimidated by this fantastical world because I wasn't as familiar with the genre. I didn't know if I would feel lost or how I would feel about these elements. And it was lovely to have someone who is familiar with the fantasy genre to kind of hold my hand and be with me as we go through this. And of course, now the world is my oyster, and I want to read more fantasy books and also, of course, explore more fantasy mystery genre blends. But I'm really glad that the buddy read pushed me through that barrier where I was a bit nervous going into a very detailed world building type of book.
And in 2025, we will get to read the sequel together to The Tainted Cup. So we're pulling that bookish memory with us because we're going to continue with that series, which is very
Oh, yeah.
exciting. The
What
buddy
about
read
you?
I have to mention is actually one that we hated.
Oh, which
But
one?
I know there are so many. So, Cascade Failure is the one that I'm going to talk about, which is a book that we both really did not enjoy, but it was an unplanned buddy read. I messaged you at one point in time that I was shocked that I actually got access to Cascade Failure. I didn't intend on reading it the month that we ended up buddy reading it, and you sent me a picture back because you had just picked it up from the library. And so it was an impromptu buddy read. We were so excited about it. The cover is just a delicious cover that I really wanted to have on my shelves. So that was one of the reasons I was really anticipating loving it. And the storyline just sounded really intriguing, but it ended up being an absolute failure. We hated every minute. We both also were reading it physically.
Mhm.
And so it took forever. And I just remember us like talking through the book, absolutely hating every minute, but still enjoying the ride, essentially.
Oh, yeah, we were so naive. They say don't judge a book by its cover, and that's true for bad books as well. Don't judge a book by the cover because the cover's gorgeous. And yeah, I remember us kind of dreading every day when we had to finally read the chapters and we're like, okay, let's do this. And then we did have really great discussions though. We were, it sounds terrible, but tearing apart that plot line and tearing apart the character development was so fun. We wouldn't recommend it to anyone else, but we were very lucky that we, found hilarity where we could.
Absolutely.
But anywho, we have good buddy reads, bad buddy reads, but either way, they end up being memorable and they're definitely worth it. But we do need to continue on with another topic. So, Danny, what is the third category we're going to talk about?
The third category is really exciting. We are going to talk about all of the readathons that people have participated in throughout the year, which I think is very fitting. This has definitely been the year of readathons for myself, and so yeah, let's get into our viewers to see what readathons they've participated in and loved.
Yeah, so we ended up having quite a few people highlight readathons, which is very exciting. And one, at least for me, stood out quite a bit. We had Nichole mention definitely Old School April. It was my most productive month because it was so much fun. And that was mentioned a second time. Oona also highlighted Old School April. My top book memory of this year is participating in Old School April. I had so much fun on sprints, got a ton of great recs from the hosts, which pushed me to try more horror, which I ended up loving. And I still remember so clearly the suspense of the reveal of which team won at the end. And it was my team. Oh, well, congratulations, Oona and friends. I didn't participate in this readathon. I remember hearing a bunch of buzz around it. People were very excited in April to read it, and I actually didn't realize that it was competitive. I thought it was one of those non-competitive readathons where everyone kind of go at their own pace. So that's actually interesting to know. And to my knowledge, it's actually a month-long readathon focused on everything nostalgia. There are, bookish prompts that you have to do, but also activity prompts, film. It kind of surrounds the entire idea of old school / nostalgic feelings, which definitely does sound like a really fun event.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of a really fun event, we also had several people that mentioned TBR-a-thon. So Bethany mentions Leandra's TBR-a-thon introduced me to so many channels and changed the way I read. I was new to BookTube and found many channels I've been watching and interacting with all year, which I second that
Aw.
contribution. I think TBR-a-thon is just fantastic. The amount of community that you've built around that event is just lovely to be a part of.
Aw, thank you, everybody.
We also had Lynn T, who said, living for Bucket Listathon and loved Leandra's TBR Harvest, which is an extension of TBR-a-thon. So we had two shout outs for TBR-a-thon, which I love. And of course, Lynn, I'm so glad that you loved Bucket Listathon as well. It was very fun to host that readathon for the second year in a row. It's definitely grown from the first year to having just checklists that I did the first readathon I ever host last year
Mhm.
to having a game board has been very fun to see the evolution of that.
I was gonna say, you better not skirt past the fact that she said she loved Bucket Listathon, because I also loved Bucket Listathon, and it is really fun, as someone who participated in last year's event and this year's event, just to see how it's grown, but also the amount of work that you've put into it between the first year and the second year. And yeah, of course, everyone loved that. I mean, who doesn't love a game board that literally has no finish line? You are just going through the maze however long you want. So yeah, that one is honestly a favorite of mine as well. But I have more readathons to actually, highlight specifically the memories surrounding them. It's really lovely to hear people say that they enjoyed the readathons that we created, and that is something that will of course stick with us as well. So with TBR-a-thon, that was my first ever event that I was hosting, and it was daunting. There's a lot of different elements to keep in mind as you're creating an event. And of course, the biggest thing that we want to keep in mind is inclusivity. We want to make sure that everyone has access to this event and can participate to the best of their ability. And it was really heartwarming to see how many people, the first comment they had for TBR-a-thon for me was that they found it very accessible to them, either as a mood reader or as someone who only reads 2 to 3 books a month, which is perfectly fine. That is what your reading life requires of you with every other responsibility you have. So that was honestly really lovely. And there were some ups and downs, I mean, with hosting a
As there
readathon.
always is.
Exactly. Like everything that could go wrong does go wrong, but then everything that goes right also goes right. So you just got to take everything as it comes. But the readathon that I felt the most fun and also the most challenged in that I participated in as a host was actually the Amazing Readathon hosted by Bree from Four Paws in a Book. This was the second year she brought it back, and I just, I was so happy to be a part of it, mainly because the year before I was just a little participant. I was just happy to be part of Team Red. And then the following year, when Bree and I actually got to know each other better, and she decided that she could trust me to become a co-host, a team leader for one of the teams. It was an honor. And of course, it was really, really fun. And I read some really great books, but also, again, some really bad books that month. You take it all. But those are the two kind of huge memories that I'll be taking into 2025 with me. How about you, Danny?
Well, speaking of being honored to be asked to co-host, my first ever competitive readathon what I was asked to co-host the Battle of the Girl Bands by Rainy Blue Reads, which was very fun, but very daunting. And it
Mhm.
definitely opened my eyes to the challenges of readathons and the inner workings of, for me, it was actually the perfect competitive readathon for me to co-host because of the fact that I do struggle to have access to a lot of books on time because a lot of
Mhm.
the books that I read I get from the library. I don't have a large physical collection, and so the fact that we could have access to the prompts ahead of time allowed me to prepare for that, because that is one of the reasons that I had not competed in a readathon before, because I didn't want to hold back my team, and so it gave me the opportunity to do that, which was amazing. And then in September, I also had The Goddess Complex by Beatriz. That was another competitive readathon. And so I've gotten my feet wet, and we'll see what 2025 has in store for us.
Woohoo! Well, that leaves one more category, and you all may have noticed we're getting ever bigger when it comes to memories, from individual books to buddy reads to readathons. And that, of course, means that our final discussion is simply expanding one's book community. And this could be booktube, but it also could just be with friends or with your community nearby. So as we go into these discussions, maybe consider a memory that you have for yourself that is a memory surrounding expanding your own book community. So we have quite a few responses, and I'm so excited to get into them. Where to start, though? That's the question.
Well, I am very excited about two of these comments because it is an event that I hold very dear to my heart. So we had Kirsten from the Reading Nymph say, "Mine has to be Battle of the Booktubers. I've made some great new friends through the challenge that I wouldn't have found otherwise. It's really meant a lot." And then Sam from Sam's Reading Corner on Instagram, or Samantha Donovan on YouTube, also said Battle of the Booktubers. And I am honored that an event that I created is part of your guys' bookish memories, because it has just been such a fun time, in the creation to the competition to reading the books to the discussions that we've had in the live shows. It has been a truly amazing event in my life. And I second what Kirsten said, that I've made so many new friends and have grown to love this like bookish community that we have. It's been a lot of fun.
I also echo Kirsten and Sam, because I, obviously, as a participant in your scheme, I have also gained so many friends, and I'm so excited for the championship round in 2025. So that's a highlight in 2024, but it's 100% already going to be a highlight in 2025.
Absolutely. And speaking of new friends, we also had a couple of people mention that. Mona says, "I can't just pick one favorite. There's been so many. I've met so many new friends, readers within this community. Keep up the good work, all of you." And then Jennifer from Pages in Chaos said, "Meeting two of my favorite booktubers in real life, meeting Krista from Books and Jams and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand was amazing. And then shortly after, starting my own booktube channel with the support of so many."
Oh my gosh, I love that comment. That is so sweet. And it actually speaks to how lovely it is, the opportunities of actually meeting people in person. Because, a lot of times our bookish community is digital. We're getting to
Yeah.
know people online. So I'm sure that that was really special to Jennifer. But speaking of making friends online, because you definitely can, Danny and I are a perfect example of that. We actually have Kaat from the Fairy Librarian saying that I found so many fantastic new booktube channels this year, and I've been loving that. I also loved making the birthday recommendation video with some of those new channels and some others that I've known for quite a while. And Kaat, just so you know, Danny and I really loved that we were able to be a part of that video. For those interested, we'll be sure to have it linked in the description, because, yeah, who doesn't want more bookish recommendations and some advice going along the way? So, yeah, again, thank you so much, Kaat, for including us in that. And I have a couple others. We actually have Christina from Paper Pages Possibilities saying, "Unboxing my first crowdfunded special edition books. The unwrapping was such a delight." I can imagine that. So, for those of you who don't know what she may be talking about, as a crowdfunded a special edition book, that means that she supported either the creator or the publisher and then was able to actually enjoy the creation that she was able to support, which sounds really lovely. And then finally, we have Sirvasha. Sirvasha says, my favorite bookish moment this year has been joining Patreon of my favorite booktubers. Something about those intimate bookish communities was so comforting to me this year. And that is just so lovely to hear, because I will say that I happen to have a Patreon. The Manor and Sirvasha is a member. She is one of my dedicated sleuths. And it's really been lovely to get to know you too, Sirvasha. And it's wonderful to hear that bookish communities can provide comfort. And
Yeah.
especially with how crazy one's life can be, it's nice that you can escape or at least find support in a way that you might not have expected.
It's like having a little family just online. Just a click
Yeah.
away instead of a phone call away. I love that. So then the time is for us to talk about our favorite bookish communities, some memorable things that we are bringing with us into 2025. I know what mine is. I think yours is probably the same.
I think it's the same as well, but take it away, Danny. Let them know what we're grateful for.
I am grateful for the community that this podcast has already and the amount of overwhelming support that I have felt from the bookish community with the creation of this podcast, because it really is just us geeking out about books and wanting to share our discussions that we were already having. And I was just shocked, and it made my heart happy for how many of you joined us on this journey and have been commenting along with us and letting us know that you've been enjoying like the pilot book, and it's been just an amazing experience, and I can't wait to see how the podcast grows.
Exactly. Honestly, Danny said everything. There's nothing for me to say beyond me too. Thank you all so much for supporting us, for getting excited about our first season and the seasons to come after it. We just can't wait to make more bookish memories with you all in 2025. And yeah, we'll see you in just a few weeks in 2025.
Happy New Year!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Reading for Content. Be sure to check the description for a schedule of our upcoming reads for this season. And for reminders and other updates, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Not Reading for Content. Where else can listeners find you, Danny?
I have a booktube and an Instagram. Both can be found at danny.dabbles. What about you?
I have the same platforms. My booktube is at Leandra the TBR0, and my Instagram is at Leandra_the TBR0. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to tune in next Friday for our next episode.